We start tonight with Kamala Harris holding her first campaign rally as the new de facto Democratic nominee for President of the United States. The vice president has secured enough delegate support to win the eventual roll call vote for her party's nomination. Today, Harris campaigning in Milwaukee, just days after Republicans named Donald Trump the Republican nominee in the same city. Harris, a former prosecutor, making the case against Trump.
Before I was elected vice president, before I was elected United States Senator, I was elected Attorney General of the state of California, and I was a courtroom prosecutor before then. And in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Harris also previewed some of the initiatives that she'd pursue as president.
We believe in a future where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead. A future where no child has to grow up in poverty. Where every worker has the freedom to join a union. Where every person has affordable health care, affordable child care, and paid family leave. We believe in a future where every senior can retire with dignity. So all of this is to say, building up the middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency.
And now Team Harris is raking in the endorsements and the money. The Harris campaign smashing fundraising records, raising $100 million in just 2 days. No candidate in history, not Trump, not Biden, not even Obama, has ever done that. Harris also won a flood of endorsements from elected officials, all of the country's Democratic governors, and the majority of Democrats in the House and the Senate supporting her. That includes the top 2 congressional Democrats. Earlier today, Senator Chuck Schumer and Congressman Hakeem Jeffries.
Now that the process is played out, from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have to.
Kamala Harris and her candidacy has excited and energized the House Democratic Caucus, the Democratic Party, and the nation. Vice President Harris has earned the nomination.
Meanwhile, President Biden returned to the White House today, COVID-free, according to his doctor. And tomorrow night, President Biden will address the nation from the Oval Office about his decision not to run for re-election. Joining me now to get us started, Howard Dean, former Vermont governor and chairman of the Democratic National Committee, and April Ryan, White House correspondent and D.C. bureau chief for The Grio. Her book is Black Women Will Save the World. It's my pleasure to have both of you tonight. Howard, I'm going to start with you. Look, you ran the DNC. So what's your take on the Harris launch so far?
Stunningly amazing. It is. I mean, I knew there was going to be a lot of enthusiasm. I had no idea that she was going to get more than half the delegates in 3 days, nor raise $100 million. So the party has got what it needed. We've come together, and And, April's book is going to be exactly right. Black women are about to save the world.
April, Kamala Harris, as I noted, setting records not only for fundraising but for support. But I guess to Howard's point, you're not really surprised by the response so far, are you?
No, I wrote a book about it. And Governor Dean is absolutely right. But seriously, she is a woman who has this momentum, this energy that no one thought. They omitted her at the beginning when they were thinking about telling the president to step aside. They omitted this woman. And now this woman is about to save the party. $100 million. She beat out Barack Obama just in 2 days. And she is on pace to potentially get the number of delegates that Joe Biden had before he left the race. And that was 3,900 delegates at the time. So she is on pace to get the majority, if not all of his delegates. So she has the momentum. She actually has a chance now. People were saying, oh, who has the chance to beat Donald Trump? It looks like Kamala Harris does.
You know, Howard, Kamala Harris is leaning into her background as a prosecutor when she attacks Trump. In your mind, is that going to be an effective strategy for undecided voters?
It's going to be incredibly effective for undecided voters. Trump's biggest vulnerability is that he's now an adjudicated convict. And that makes people really, really uncomfortable. So he's got his core MAGA people, and you can't move them no matter what you do. But she is now making the case. The whole race has shifted in an incredibly unexpected way. And she has really come out of the box hard. The Democrats really, really wanted somebody to unite them. She's the candidate for a variety of reasons. One of which is she's actually been in office for 3.5 years. It actually knows, not only knows a lot of the foreign leaders, she knows and gets along well with all the foreign leaders that couldn't stand Donald Trump. I mean, this is really a breath of fresh air for the country and for the party.
April, her potential VP picks, I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches, in my opinion, but they've been out on TV since she jumped into the race. Take a quick listen.
President Biden yesterday endorsed Vice President Harris, as did I, as did many across this country.
I'm excited to fully endorse Vice President Harris as for the next president of the United States.
I want to make sure that Kamala Harris wins. I'm going to work for her all over this country and do what I can to make sure we stop Donald Trump.
April, I want to get your thoughts on who you think is the right pick for Harris.
Well, we are still in a time where there are still people who are kind of gun shy for pushing a woman totally. They need a man on the ticket, unfortunately. They need a white man from the South on the ticket to balance the ticket out. You know, there's so many people who talk, Governor Dean, you're laughing, but it's the truth, and you know it. But unfortunately, we're still in that time. But, you know, there are some people who said, oh, what about 2 Black women? No, it cancels it out in this moment in 2024. A Black woman and a Black man, no, it cancels itself out. She needs a Southern white male to balance out the ticket. And she has got her people. They are looking, they're vetting, and she's going to make the right choice for a win for Donald Trump. And people are supporting her. And it's not just Black people. It's white women. It's white men. It's people from all races. She has got that special juice at this moment.
So, Howard, I want to put the same question to you. If you were providing counsel at this time to Kamala Harris, what would it be when it comes to a VP pick?
It would be, who do you have the best personal chemistry with? That's really, really critical. I think one of the reasons that Kamala has become an incredibly successful candidate is that Biden had great chemistry with her. And when you have great chemistry with your vice president, you bring them into the circle. They start to learn as much as you do as the president of the United States. Biden's got a 50-year career in politics, and Kamala Harris is now the beneficiary of having worked very closely with somebody with that kind of experience. So I did chuckle. I think April's probably right, but one of the things about Harris that I think we haven't talked about very much and hasn't been the subject of a lot of talk is, I think this woman is going to energize the Generation Z and the young voters. They are kind of tired of the 2 white guys from the South kind of stuff. And I think I think she has more latitude than we might normally have thought. That is a different generation than my generation that thinks more about that kind of ticket balancing. And not to say it's not true. I mean, there's certainly plenty of racism left in the country and so forth. But the racists are all gone. They're going to be in the MAGA movement. That's what that's about. But I think she's got latitude, and what I hope she does is pick somebody who's going to be really attractive to young people. Because if we get young people out to vote, we're already going to get women, we're already going to get African Americans, we're going to get a pretty good dent in the South Asian community. If we get young people, we win this going away.
April, so it's a sprint now to Election Day. You've only got 105 days left. What does Kamala Harris need to do with that remaining time?
She needs to show her record. She needs to make people love her. She needs to make people understand she is the one for this moment to take this country forward economically, fighting any kind of pandemics, world issues, etc. She has the experience. And prosecutorially, as she said, she is the prosecutor against the felon. But here's the big piece. Tomorrow, she is going to the Zeta Phi Beta sorority Brule. And I talked to the international president and CEO, Dr. Stacey Grant, who says she's going to be speaking to 6,000 to 8,000 Black women of all ages. And she is going to talk about the delegates. She's going to talk about the way forward and the successes of the Biden administration. This is a moment for Kamala Harris to shine. And she's shining. She's got success after success after success. And we are watching the moment that Kamala Harris is moving into the Democratic convention to seal the deal to potentially run against Donald Trump to become the president of the United States. So tomorrow is going to be a big deal for her with the Divine Nine group.
It is the weirdest thing to me. Democrats say that it is racist to believe, well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but it's good. I love you guys.
I don't know, still working on the jokes, maybe? Crowds seem to go, huh? Whatever that was. One thing is clear. Of all the people Donald Trump could have picked to replace the vice president he left for dead on January 6th, J.D. Vance was certainly one of them. Such cringe-inducing moments aside, it appears some Trump allies are already second-guessing having J.D. Vance's name on the ticket. Our friend at The Atlantic, Tim Alberta, reported as much, adding the people he spoke to acknowledged the selection was, quote, born of cockiness, meant to run up margins with the base in a blowout. But things are very different since Sunday afternoon at 1:46 p.m. Clearly, Trump built a campaign designed to beat President Joe Biden, but it is Vice President Kamala Harris assembling her team now. NBC News cites two sources familiar with the effort in reporting the Harris campaign has requested vetting materials from 5 possible running mates for their teams. That's North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. There appear to be a number of other names under consideration as well, all of whom illustrate the difference between the two campaigns. Listen.
Listen, Donald Trump brings chaos to everything he does. Think about it. I was Attorney General when he was president before. I spent more time with my team in court trying to protect people's rights because Donald Trump was trying to rip them away.
J.D. Vance is a phony. He's fake. I mean, he first says that Donald Trump is like Hitler, and now he's acting like he's Lincoln. I mean, the problem with J.D. Vance is he has no conviction, but I guess his running mate has 34.
If you want a nominee who can put Donald Trump's destruction of Roe v. Wade at center stage, if you want a nominee who actually prosecuted criminals like Donald Trump, and if you want a nominee who can put Trump's age and fitness in the forefront, Kamala Harris is the person.
Joining our conversation, editor for The Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com, Chris Quinn is back, who early on stressed the importance of calling out the lies Donald Trump and his allies tell. Kim is still with us. Chris, take me inside how you have covered and how you think the events of the last 48 hours have been received among your readers?
It's a good time to talk. We had a brainstorm session in the newsroom today to talk about what we're going to do. We have not had a candidate from Ohio figure into the presidential race in forever. And so we want to do a whole lot of stuff. And the themes that emerge are so much about who is he? I remember in 2016, after his book, Hillbilly Elegy, came out, all of the business community in Cleveland thought he would be the future centrist Republican of Ohio. And they had a big event, packed, where he did a panel discussion, talked about what he would do, and he was not the hateful, invective-spewing guy. He looked out and he saw about 20 black people in the audience. He goes, our story is the same. My story is your story. He was embracing them. There was none of the confrontational stuff, and people were excited that he could be the future. What happened in 2020, it just turned upside down. He became this invective-spewing guy that nobody recognizes. So who is he? Is this his evolution because he's a young guy and the more he learns, he becomes this? Or is it rank opportunism where he's trying to do it? The best example is abortion. Just a few months ago, dead set against abortion. Now he supports the abortion pill. How do you make that leap? Is that him representing what Ohioans want, which they demonstrated at the ballot box last year? Or is it to get the fealty of Donald Trump? And I don't know the answer.
Chris, you raise a good point. I mean, he's from your state, and so understanding who he is of utmost importance, even more than the horse race and up and down and whether he helps or hurts the ticket. It's a good reminder for all of us, and admonition is how I take it. And I know you didn't mean it that way. But it gets at perhaps the most politically damaging part of the story for him. I mean, I have hosted this show for feels like 99 years. I think it's about 8. And I've spoken to a lot of people with a lot of concerns that Donald Trump is corrupt and extrajudicial and has broken a lot of laws. They've never described him as harshly as J.D. Vance did, as America's Hitler, as cultural heroin. He flat out said he believed Donald Trump's accusers of sexual assault and sexual misconduct. A person who found Donald Trump more odious, if they existed, they haven't appeared on my show, which is 2 hours long, and I've been doing this 5 days a week for 8 years. What are the local theories about how you could hate someone so much and then bow down to them?
When his book came out, I don't think he had higher office in mind. It was the others in Ohio that saw him and his message and thought he could be in higher office. As he moved in that direction, he turned it down in 2018. We had a candidate that was the odds-on candidate, a guy named Josh Mandel, and he dropped out without notice. And they tried to get Vance to run then, but he didn't want to because he didn't want to spend all that time in Washington. At least that's what he said. But as time has gone on, he's decided he really wants to be in these positions of power. And it looks like he'll say or do anything to get it. I'm a little bit confused as to why Trump chose him, because Trump is going to win Ohio. We've looked at the Obama numbers when he won and the Trump numbers when he won, and Trump got a lot more votes with fewer registered voters. I don't think Ohio can be in play at all. So he didn't need Vance to get Ohio. I think he wanted him for his young looks to pose against Biden, but now he's stuck.
He is stuck, Kim. And again, for the second time in 3 days, it is Vice President Kamala Harris who holds all the cards. She can make this selection, and she will do what is normal. I feel like it's 48 after, and I haven't reminded folks that what Trump does is not normal, but she'll pick someone who she would like to have as a governing partner. She has an opportunity in all of these great names that are being floated to also pick someone who is a good strategic choice. Do you have any thoughts or favorites or analysis about the names that have surfaced?
I think that they are all, I think Democrats are lucky that they have a very deep bench of folks who I think would make a very strong running mate choice. I think for Kamala Harris, one benefit she has is she's been vice president. She knows what the job is. So I think that more than anything will inform who she picks. Yes, the traditional things we think about, like what state you're from and how you build a coalition. I'm not saying that that's unimportant, but I think time has shown that that's perhaps less important than people think. I think she is trying to put together a team, and she knows what it takes to be a vice president as part of a successful administration, and that's going to be front of mind. You know, as for Trump, my sense is he picked J.D. Vance because Trump is not a strategist. He doesn't care about winning Ohio. He has enough of an ego that he thinks he's going to win no matter who's next to him, right? He's thinking about Mike Pence and how even though Mike Pence spent 4 years, save one day, standing behind him, looking onto him lovingly, that one day that he defied him is still stuck in his craw. And he has seen the way that J.D. Vance has totally done an about-face or a two-face or whatever you want to call it, to go from that moderate Ohio author to somebody who is expresses more fealty to Trump than ever. And that's exactly what Trump was looking for in this. He may come to regret it, but that's how he got there.
It's been just over 2 days, can you believe that, since President Joe Biden announced he would be dropping out of the presidential race. And 2 days since he endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as his replacement. A lot has happened in that time, to put it mildly. I mean, in less than 3 days, Harris has already secured enough delegates to win the nomination, making her essentially the de facto nominee heading into next month's convention. Her campaign also says that between Sunday afternoon and last night, it raised over $100 million, with the majority of donors giving for the very first time. That's a big deal. That includes the largest single-day fundraising haul in American history. The campaign also says in that same time period, nearly 60,000 folks signed up as volunteers. People were going to be out there door knocking, making phone calls. Harris has shored up support she's also shored up support, I should say, from nearly every prominent Democrat, including, just today, the respective party leaders of the House and the Senate.
Kamala Harris and her candidacy has excited and energized the House Democratic Caucus, the Democratic Party, and the nation.
The enthusiasm in this big, diverse, representative party was amazing. It was palpable. You could cut it with a knife.
And just today, Harris made her first official campaign stop. And she did it with a delicious, and I mean delicious, dose of trolling Donald Trump and the Republicans. You know why? Because her first campaign stop today was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is the same city where just last week the Republican Party held their convention. Although Harris's speech, of course, did not feature an authoritarian vision for our country's future. Obviously not. That's not her vision. Nor did it include anyone who just recently left jail. There's no shout-outs to those people. Or Hulk Hogan ripping off his shirt. All things that happened last week. It had basically a very different vibe to it.
We believe in a future where everyone has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead. A future where no child has to grow up in poverty. Where every worker has the freedom to join a union. Where every person has affordable health care, affordable child care, and paid family leave.
So that response, all of that screaming and cheering, basically captures the feeling of most Democrats over the last few days, which is pretty encouraging, considering that the weeks before that were dominated by painful, gut-wrenching conversations inside the party about the future of a guy they all love, Joe Biden. And once Joe Biden stepped aside and endorsed Vice President Harris, the unity around the task ahead, which is defeating Donald Trump, and the woman who's going to lead it, has also come exploding into public view.
I know this is going to be a strong year with this ticket and the new energy we'll see.
She's going to win. She's young, she's dynamic, she cares deeply about the future of the country.
It was great. It was pretty exciting. 496 votes unanimously. They're so proud of her as a Californian.
So what happens now? Well, For starters, President Biden will give a primetime address to the nation tomorrow evening to explain his decision to step aside and talk about the next 6 months of his presidency, during which time he can get a lot done and do a lot of things. As for Kamala Harris, she will continue to be out on the campaign trail. Hopefully more trolling is in store, we'll see. And a lot of things are going to be taking place behind the scenes at the same time. I mean, she, of course, needs to pick a vice president of her own. And the DNC wants that process to happen quickly, as in within the next 2 weeks, which is very, very fast for a process like this. Harris also has to integrate her team with the Biden team. Now, there's a big advantage there because there's already an apparatus of very smart, talented people who've been up and running for months. And there is a lot to do, but there's no question this will be a smoother transition than any other would have been in this crazy moment. That also doesn't mean everything will be the same. I mean, this is the Harris campaign now. She's free to differ from her predecessor on policy if she wants to. We'll see. That will be an interesting part of the next couple of weeks to watch. She has different superpowers and different areas she will need to work on to appeal to voters than President Biden. I also think it's fair to say that the campaign is not only focusing on its proactive message on end a Harris presidency, but its attacks on Donald Trump, which we saw on full display this afternoon in that same speech.
Before I was elected vice president, before I was elected United States Senator, I was elected Attorney General of the state of California, and I was a courtroom prosecutor before then. And in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. I promise you, I will proudly put my record against his any day of the week.
Now, she clearly didn't hold back there, which may or may not have given the Trump campaign some pause. Although, for what it's worth, the ex-president claimed today that he is willing to debate Harris. And Harris, of course, will also have to deal with the bad faith attacks from Trump and his fellow Republicans. And I'm betting a lot of them will be gross and racist and misogynistic, as you might expect. Although, thus far, over the last couple of days, they've kind of struggled to figure out exactly how to go after her. Remember, every ad, every digital campaign, every stump speech was centered around Joe Biden, the guy they were running against, and a lot of it around his age specifically. That's a big part of what they had there. And now they're running a convicted criminal against a female prosecutor who happens to be nearly 20 years younger than Donald Trump. So, of course, they have to throw out the old playbook. And again, they will find new lines of attack, I promise you. There is still a long road ahead. This is going to be hard. It's going to be an absolute grind. But so far, Kamala Harris seems up for the challenge. And it's clear that the Democratic Party is pretty much behind her every step of the way. David Plouffe served as campaign manager for Barack Obama's 2008 presidential campaign, and he is the co-host of the podcast, The Campaign Managers. Claire McCaskill is a former Democratic senator from Missouri. They know a lot of things about campaigns, and they're joining me now. All right, David, I mean, we're going to talk about the Harris campaign, but there's been a lot of reporting. We have to ask you about it. It's the elephant in the room, or maybe the donkey. I mean, there's reporting that you've been asked to join the campaign. People out there may be like, please, David, join the campaign. Have you made a decision about whether you're going to join the campaign?
Well, Jen, you know very well, when there's a change like this, I think a lot of us that works in politics, a lot of our former colleagues, even people in the private sector, there's rumors about who may come in. All I know is what you know, is that Jen O'Malley Dillon ran a great campaign in 20 that defeated Donald Trump. She's built a great effort here. And so she'll have to figure out what help she needs. I think all of us in the country are up for helping where we can. But the good news is the excitement that you see, and I've seen it on my phone. I'm sure you've seen it on your phone. We're seeing it in real numbers in terms of volunteer signups, in terms of donations, in terms of enthusiasm. And that's great. And because I think she is off to a good start, that's important because we don't have many days left. Every day you have a good day is pretty important. But the battle here, I think, is to define herself. It might be strange to say about a vice president, but most of the people that will decide this election don't know about the tough fight she took on as a prosecutor or as attorney general, might not know about her biography, and then define the race, which ultimately needs to be a choice between what would 4 years of Donald Trump look like for American families and what would Kamala Harris bring to those families. And I think that's a debate she's well situated to win. So as you said, it's a long grind, but really, really promising start so far. And we'll see. I mean, Trump said he wasn't going to debate 2 days ago. Now he's saying he'll debate many times. Obviously, he's a slippery character, so we'll see ultimately. But either way, I mean, I think it's good for Americans when candidates debate. So I think Kamala Harris should say, I'll see you on September 10th. And hopefully he'll show up. And if he doesn't, he needs to be made to pay a maximal price for that, which he won't like. And I agree with you. The last thing I'll say is they had plenty of time to prepare for this scenario. Like if Harris is the nominee, what's our first minute look like? What's our first hour look like? What's our first day look like? And so far, it's a pretty pathetic effort. Eventually they'll get their act together. But I was surprised by that because they had plenty of time to prepare for this contingency.
No question about it. And they're a little all over the place. So, Claire, let me ask you, because one of the reasons you're so great to talk to is you're always a straight shooter. And the energy over the last couple of days has been bananas. I mean, the money, the enthusiasm, the volunteers, how unified it is. But this is going to be hard. It's going to be a grind. I think people need to prepare themselves for that. So what are you tough campaigns. What wakes you up at night as you're thinking about this campaign and what the Harris campaign and what people out there who love her and are rooting for her need to prepare for?
Well, we were facing two big problems. We were facing an enthusiasm problem, and we were facing a problem that was one that was inherent in the candidate, in that there were a lot of people, they were formerly called the double haters. Well, both of those problems are greatly diminished now. So the campaign, I believe that what they're going to be able to do with enthusiasm is going to somewhat be on autopilot. My sense is that the women of America, that young Black voters, that a lot of working people who are energized by this idea of this historic presidency, I just think that's going to solve itself. So now we've just got to really concentrate on those voters that really didn't like either candidate before and convince 2 or 3% of those, the ones that maybe voted for Trump and then voted for Biden, to come back home to a party that they can respect. And I got to tell you, I'm with David on this. I am shocked how badly the Republicans have handled this. The panic. I mean, it really has been panic with a dose of racism. This idea calling her a DEI hire. I mean, all saying a DEI hire is she's not a white man. That's all that is. That is shorthand for Kamala Harris is not a white man. And that is so offensive. And then, whoops, our guy is old now. They're like, oh, wait a minute. He's the one who looks really old and really out of shape and really rambling and really doesn't have his act together. So I'm not saying this is going to be easy, but it just got a lot easier than when it was before.
But we begin tonight with the remarkable and historic speed in which Vice President Kamala Harris went from being President Joe Biden's running mate to the de facto Democratic nominee for President of the United States. Just let this sink in, okay? In the 53 hours since President Biden announced that he was no longer running for re-election and endorsed VP Harris, she has raised more than $100 million from more than 1 million unique donors, according to her campaign. She's had the best single-day fundraising haul in presidential campaign history and has recruited 58,000 new campaign volunteers. She's received an outpouring of endorsements from hundreds of members of her party, as well as the backing of several labor groups. And as of today, Vice President Kamala Harris has earned the support of enough delegates to win the party's nomination, all in just 2.5 days. That is historic. The VP also held her first presidential campaign rally near Milwaukee, Wisconsin today, where she began to make her case against Trump to voters in a crucial swing state, highlighting Project 2025, as well as Donald Trump's support for abortion bans and tax cuts for the super rich. She even walked on stage to the song Freedom by Beyonce after getting permission from Queen Bee herself, a theme that she touched on several times in her speech.
Generations of Americans before us led the fight for freedom. And now, Wisconsin, the baton is in our hands. We, who believe in the sacred freedom to vote, will make sure every American has the ability to cast their ballot and have it counted. We, who believe that every person in our nation who should have the freedom to live safe from the terror of gun violence. And we, who believe in reproductive freedom, will stop Donald Trump's extreme abortion bans because we trust women to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do.
Harris also received another major endorsement today from the two Democratic leaders on Capitol Hill, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries.
We're going to hold the Senate. We're going to win the House. We're going to elect Kamala Harris as our next president in November.
Today is a great, great day for the Democratic Party and the country. Vice President Harris will soon be our nominee and will be elected president in November. We are brimming with excitement, enthusiasm, unity.
And with the Democratic National Convention just a few weeks away, Vice President Harris has already begun the process of choosing a running mate. Today, NBC News is reporting that Harris's campaign has requested vetting materials from 5 potential VP candidates: North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. 2 other possible names under discussion include Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and former Congressman Cedric Richmond of Louisiana. And a source tells NBC News the campaign is also actively considering Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. In the meantime, President Biden returned to the White House today after testing negative for COVID. He will be delivering an address to the nation tomorrow night, where he will explain his decision to bow out of the race and outline how he plans to use his final 6 months in office. Joining me now is Aaron Haynes, editor-at-large for The 19th and MSNBC contributor, and John Nichols, national affairs correspondent for The Nation, and Fernand Amandi, Democratic pollster and strategist and MSNBC political analyst. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to go to you first, Aaron. What do we know about this vetting of candidates? Before we even get to that, actually, let's take a moment and just sort of ruminate on this speech today that the vice president did. This was her opening. It was a pretty big deal of an opening. Let's talk about that first. Oh, yeah, Aaron, can you hear me? Oh, we got you.
Donald Trump is relying on support from...
Oh, go for it. Go.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep.
Okay. No, we're seeing a Kamala Harris that's just so much more confident and comfortable in her own skin than she was when she ran for president 4 years ago. I mean, coming out to Freedom by Beyonce, yeah, that is definitely a choice. I think it says a lot about, the tone I think we can expect to see over the next 100 or so days. I mean, she's already acting like the nominee. She's making the case for her presidency now. She's not waiting. She's introducing herself to the American people. She's positioning herself as a prosecutor who's making the case against Donald Trump and casting him as a criminal and a threat to our democracy. And there is excitement. I mean, you saw it from Leader Schumer, and then you saw it today in that crowd in Milwaukee. The momentum seems to be with her. We're seeing it in the record fundraising since Sunday in events like the marathon history-making call with Women with Black Women. I know you were on that call too, Joy. We have a story up on the 19th about just kind of how that call came together and just the energy and the excitement that came out of that. Black women, literally 44,000 strong, ready to not only show their excitement for Kamala Harris, but to get to work for Kamala Harris to ensure that she is the first woman elected president of the United States.
So strong was that call that the brothers decided to try to overtop it last night and do their own call. We're going to talk about that later in the show. They're like, well, we can do a call too. John Nichols, let's talk about this other piece, because while the excitement among women is very clear, the excitement among Black women through the roof, the excitement among the Black community, huge. The excitement among women broadly, huge, because Dobbs has fueled this sort of desire to, sort of do a revenge election. People talk about Rovember. Where Joe Biden actually was demographically strong in a way that most Democrats have not been was with white men, the white guys. He more voted for him in larger percentages and numbers than voted for Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. You have to go out back to, I believe, to Jimmy Carter to get the kind of percentages that he was able to get, specifically with white men. That's a place where Kamala Harris wants to try to, Vice President Harris wants to try to rebound. And working class voters. Sort of gauge for me her appeal there and whether or not some of that crossover can take place.
It can take place. There's simply no question of that. Remember, when you list people in the past who ran for president that did quite well among white men, we've got to put Barack Obama high on that list.
Yes,
he actually did very well in a lot of rural areas where he was winning people that Democrats have had a hard time with. So don't necessarily assume that because Kamala Harris is a Black woman, that that's going to be all that hard for her. She can make connections with people in all sorts of ways. Now, one of the things to note is that her speech today in Milwaukee had a heavy-duty economic justice component. She was going right to those issues, and she's excellent at talking about them. Also, remember, the unions, not just, the unions you might think would be quick and easy, but a lot of industrial unions and unions in the building trades are stepping up. The AFL-CIO itself has endorsed her very rapidly. Why? Because although the media doesn't cover labor very well, over the last few years, Kamala Harris has been the White House point person on working with unions. She actually has headed the group within the White House that works with unions. She's talked to all of these folks, all the leaders, but also she's appeared at the conventions. She's been in the union halls. Now, I know unions are multiracial and multi-ethnic, but I can tell you that it is working with unions that you can cross a lot of those lines that are sometimes difficult. So I see Harris as actually very well positioned to get a substantial portion of the white male vote, as well as the broader working class vote, multiracial, multi-ethnic. And I'm talking to leaders in rural counties because I read a lot about rural. And I'm telling you, there is excitement there. There were people at this rally in Milwaukee who had driven from rural counties around Wisconsin because they wanted to be a part of it. In fact, there were so many people that came to the rally in Milwaukee, they had to move it to a bigger venue. And they even then had challenge on dealing with that crowd. So something's going on here. And it isn't just big city. It's small industrial towns, places that have been left behind. And it's also rural areas. Now, this is a challenge for her. She's got to talk about this. She's got to do speeches like she did today, where she blends it all together, brings reproductive rights, brings, all of the other issues, but then gets that economic justice component in there. If she does, she'll be very successful at it.
It doesn't hurt that she's running against somebody, J.D. Vance, who wrote a whole diss track book about Appalachia and who, with his partner Donald Trump, is promising to get rid of Obamacare, which means rural hospitals will continue to disappear, and who wants to cut taxes on the super rich and tax basically people down the scale more than their CEOs are getting taxed, and that their economic plan is all trickle-down economics. Probably helpful. The other side is helping her out. Fernand, let's talk about this combination. I want to now circle back to this vice presidential pick because, you know, there are different ways to think about it. You can think about it as you pick somebody who can help you bring a state. A lot of people thinking Josh Shapiro, critical Pennsylvania. You think about a Mark Kelly, astronaut, you know, a wife with a really compelling story. You know, some people are like, put 2 women, Big Gretch, you know, go to Michigan, win Michigan, and also just maximize women. There are lots, you know, somebody who could just debate the heck out of J.D. Vance, which basically anybody breathing because he's an easy target. From your point of view as a data guy, is there a particular pick that would help her the most?
Absolutely. First off, I mean, what an amazing 72 hours it's been, Joy. I mean, Democrats went from the depths of despair on Saturday afternoon, and here we are now thinking that the race is within grasp again, and it frankly is because of this extraordinary rollout of the campaign. They always say that the best days of the campaign are the rollout, the introduction days. I mean, Kamala Harris has taken that to a new standard. I don't think anybody's ever had a rollout like this. Now, to your question on the vice presidential pick, this is critical because this is one of the key tests that Americans are going to judge her on between now and when the voting starts, Joy, as to whether or not they're going to trust her with being a potential president of the United States. There are 3 factors that have to go into play on this. Number 1, is the person chosen ready to be president in the event that anything happens? And I know that is paramount for Vice President Harris. She knows better than anybody on the planet how critical making that type of a choice is. Second is this person going to help me get to 270 electoral votes? Because that's all that matters. They don't win the election, democracy is lost, and dictatorship is upon us. So that political calculus is going to be paramount in the thinking.
Joining us now is Jotega Edie, the founder of Win with Black Women, which organized that call of Harris supporters with 90,000 attendees. Also with me are Angela Rye, co-host of the Native Land Pod podcast and former executive director and general counsel to the Congressional Black Caucus, and Alexis McGill-Johnson, president of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America and the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Both Alexis and Angela attended that organizing call, but Jotega, you organized it. So I'd love to start with you. I mean, first of all, who even knew that 90,000 people could do anything all at the same time on the internet without something crashing? But talk to me about how it came together and what it was like to get the number of RSVPs, just the interest that apparently electrified a real part of the American electorate.
Well, there's just 2 words. It's Kamala Harris. And it was quite historic to be in unity and in coalition with so many Black women and some of our allies that joined that call as well. And that night, we had just a powerful moment of unity, unified around one goal, and that was our commitment to seeing and ensuring that Vice President Kamala Harris is the next president of the United States. And it was great to be there with both Alexis and Angela, who have been a part of the Win with Black Women collective for the last 4 years. So we have been meeting on most Sunday nights for the last 4 years. We came together 4 years ago around our collective outrage against the racism and sexism that we were seeing in the narrative as it related to Vice President Kamala Harris when she was being discussed as a nominee for vice president on the 2020 presidential ticket. And we kept those meetings going. And on Sunday night, we had a standing call because Black women had been organizing. Beautiful letter that Melanie Campbell penned where Black women were speaking very boldly about our support of the Biden-Harris ticket. And when we got the news, we knew that our agenda was going to shift a bit. And we knew that we were going to have increased interest in the call. But my goodness, the fire that was lit, and we had 44,000, I believe, on the actual Zoom, and another 50,000 Black women that were in Clubhouse and on other Zooms, because we all knew that in that moment, 1, we wanted to be united. 2, we wanted to be in sisterhood with each other. And 3, we knew we had to get to work. And that was what that call was about. It was about celebrating this historic moment, but it was just as much about getting the work. And that's why you saw the $1.5 million raised led by Star Jones. And you saw, 10,000 women sign up to organize. And this is just caught on. And we're seeing Black men, the powerful call that they had last night, and other allies are following suit and organizing calls, because we are all just excited about Vice President Kamala Harris, not only what she represents, but the incredible record that she has had.
Of course it was a standing call, right? I mean, it's like, guess what? Black women are organizing even when the world is not watching, right? Even when nobody's talking about it, the work goes on, the fight continues. Alexis, I take to heart what Joteka is saying about it wasn't just celebration, it was also marching orders. It sounds like there was kind of, there's a strategy behind all of this, which is not just about protecting Kamala Harris, but also going on the offense in terms of what Donald Trump and his allies may try to do to her in the coming months. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, first of all, we've been clear that Donald Trump is an existential threat to the Black community and to all of the rights and freedoms that we care about, to the very democracy that we are trying to save in this moment. I think what felt so powerful on Sunday night, right, is that we are used to being called in to lead. We are used to being called in. And that was actually just the leadership and the work and the brilliance of Joteka and all of our sisters who have been meeting for so long. But this felt like we were in a moment where we had the power to dream, right? It's different. It hits different when you actually see that. And I think that inspiration and that moment when 44,000 Black women are on a call and we are taking those marching orders, and we were talking about knowing in this moment, the amount of sexism and racism and violence that can be coming at our leaders, at many leaders who are going to be on that call, and how we have to take the helm and ensure that she knows that our hands are on her back, supporting her, holding, so she can do what she needs to do out there. And so taking that work and continuing on was the most incredible moment.
Angela, can you talk a little bit about, sort of how you came away from that call and where you think the greatest amount of work needs to be done as it concerns Vice President Harris, the de facto nominee?
Absolutely. First, I just want to really take this time to honor the work, the toil that when we don't see it, that Joteka Edie puts into these calls with Win with Black Women. And she isn't just this way on organizing calls. She's this way about protecting our interests at all times, whether it's helping a Black woman director in Hollywood to ensure we're all watching that film, to a pardon for Marilyn Mosby, which is much deserved, to bringing Brittany Griner back home, which is also much deserved. And all of those things are tied very much to the legacy of Kamala Harris. And that is what this call was about. I was on the call and got off because I was at the Roots concert with my family in Seattle. And Joteka hit me back and was like, you need to come back on. And I was right there because she is our fearless leader. And it's my honor to walk shoulder to shoulder with her. I think what we have to be mindful of now, we had a celebratory moment on Sunday. And at the same time, just as Alexis was saying, there were marching orders flying. And so while we can have relief and while we can celebrate, we also know that the work is just beginning. Now, what Kamala Harris is up against is folks talking about her sleeping her way to the top. Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar. Now what she's up against are folks questioning her ethnicity, questioning her fidelity to Black culture, to the people. This is a woman who pledged AKA at Howard University. It's ridiculous. And so we know already, we are Black women who've been passed over for promotions at our jobs. We are Black women who have been underpaid and overworked. We know that we are under attack from the womb to the tomb. And to that end, there is no better fighter in this particular moment than Kamala Harris. It was a divine appointment on Sunday. It will be a divine appointment through the 100+ days until the election. We've got our work cut out for us. I don't even endorse candidates. This ain't even about that. To me, this is about doing the right thing to protect the democracy that this country has said it stands on and believes in. And there is no better champion for that than Kamala Harris. There's nobody better to prosecute the case against Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. We all know that. We're all very clear. And so with divine timing and some good marching orders from Joteika, we're ready to go.
You know, it's such a point well taken about the bigness of this moment, Alexis, and the fact that the anti-fascist coalition, the pro-democracy coalition, is big in this country, right? And you see that in the last 48 hours. I do wonder whether you think this moment upends the traditional political playbook, right? I mean, because we're talking a lot about what states are must win, right? And Ron Brownstein at The Atlantic brings the sort of shadow of Obama to this moment and suggests that some people think the gains that Kamala Harris could generate over Biden among the key elements of the old Obama coalition, so that's young people, minorities, college-educated whites, could exceed any erosion she might experience with working class and older white voters. Nominating a black woman would challenge the belief that politicians have to appease older white voters in order to be successful. Is that true now? Does it have to be true? Or can the country evolve?
I think we are in a moment of a new realignment, right? And it's a coalition that she will capture, because we also think about what are the conditions that have gotten us to this moment right now, right? We have gone through and lost a historic election with with a first female nominee. We've also been through Me Too. We've also lost Dobbs. We've also been in a moment where we actually understand what fascism feels like, right? It is happening every day on the ground in communities when our rights are being stripped away from us and people are traveling hundreds of miles just to get access to basic health care. And she has been a voice of helping us articulate that, our best messenger, in fact, helping us articulate the real stakes on the ground in community. And she will be doing that with her economic message. She will be doing that and helping us understand the global trends and fear around what fascism looks like abroad. And so I actually think that we have the ability now to really create a new alignment. This is always going to be a turnout election. And she just energized the base in a way that no other candidate had, right? And so I think that's the excitement, right? That's the joy. You know, a coach once told me when they wanted to understand what team was going to win, the first thing they do is they look at who has their shoulders back.
Yeah.
Who has their shoulders back?
So true.
Because they're the believers. And I think because we are sitting taller in this moment and capturing that and building the infrastructure, you know, it is that belief, but that infrastructure that Joteika put in place 4 years ago, the infrastructure that we rely on every day at Planned Parenthood Action Fund and political organizations, and the commentary that Angela and others and you do to help us make meaning of this moment. That's actually what's going to capture the momentum and actually move us forward.
Joteika, you know, you mentioned black men in terms of their engagement on this issue, and there's been some elite narrative, some data about Trump making inroads among in communities of color, and specifically with young black men. How much do you think, from, you know, anecdotally, given the short time frame we're talking about here, do you think this changes that calculation, especially among men of color?
I think it absolutely. I think we look at last night, there were, I believe, 20,000 on Zoom. They reached capacity very quickly. And I believe overall, it was probably more than 40,000 black men that were organizing for Vice President Kamala Harris last night. They raised over $1 million. Black men are talking. What we know is that Donald Trump, he's always been about, you know, the paper tigers, right? And what we're seeing is just, I believe, just not very much the real story. I think where we're going to win this election, we're going to win it door to door in communities across the country. And that's where black men are talking to each other. They're organizing. And I believe that we're going to see more momentum from black men organizing for Kamala Harris and working in solidarity with black women and other allies to make sure that, as Angela outlined, that over the next 100 days, we're going to get to work, because we are all ready to see Vice President Kamala Harris become the next president of this country.